We are going to address now the challenges and the way that service providers are ready to embrace the challenges and help the broadband community. How they can leverage the value-added services, how they can differentiate. So I'm going to start addressing that, and please free to share with us some of the great content that you have prepared for us today so that we can provide a complete picture. So if we were to think of the value-added services as a way to complete the deployment, how would you see that in your case?
Start?
Yeah,
please.
So hello everybody. I'm very happy to be here. Just a word, because that's the first time I'm here with you, and so I'm Vice President of Home Services at Orange. So value-added services are very important for operators. They are compulsory. Why? Because today the traditional differentiators that were based on the management of the scarcity of the throughput are not relevant anymore. We have to differentiate. But now fiber access in particular brings such an abundant bandwidth that you have to find other ways to make it happen. So value-added services are very important, are a way for operators to differentiate. And the other thing is that home has become a great place for everybody to work. Home has become a classroom, and a doctor's office has become a place where we enjoy streaming contents, playing video games. And as a user at home, I want to have some specific connectivity and specific guarantee that my connected service will be optimized. I don't want to be disturbed while I'm working by my kids who are playing next door games. So I want my operator to have this extra specific service to me to provide me with prioritized bandwidth, latency, and of course security. So this is a kind of example that we as operator can bring to our customers to make it clear that broadband access will not become a commodity, but will be, let's say, enhanced by extra added value services. What do you think, Lance?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting as we've been talking over the last few days. There was a study that we had done at Verizon a year and a half ago. For those that don't know, we offer this service today that it's called Whole Home Wi-Fi. You know, great name. We're really good at great naming at things at Verizon, by the way. Whole Home Wi-Fi was simply, we realized as we did this study that people, they want the exact same thing out of a home network that they want out of a cellular network. And strangely enough, the prioritization of what they want is almost identical. And for years, I think as operators, we focused our energy on doing faster and faster bandwidth because it was a very simple speed that we could sell. It was a number that people reacted to. But as we really studied it, consumers, they need enough speed for what they're doing. But in reality, what they value most importantly is reliability. Right, and that has implications on the home network and how we do SON and all of those things and make sure handoffs are reliable. They value coverage and making sure that that network works everywhere, just like in our cellular networks. And then the third on the list, or actually it was kind of third and fourth, was performance. Actually, security was the other one that was kind of neck and neck with it. And so it shows that the consumer has changed directions in what they want from their home network, right? They want that connectivity. And there was another speaker during this thing that brought up something that I loved. And he basically was talking about for most consumers now, they don't recognize the difference between internet and Wi-Fi or internet and 5G. Do you know that, this is a little stupid piece of trivia, you know, some of the folks in the audience know this. For years, before we had SON, we had two SSIDs within Verizon routers. One of them was the default router, and then the other one was the default, you know, SSID name, and it was always randomly chosen, -5G. And when we asked consumers before 5G launched, like 80% of people thought they already had 5G because the network they were connecting to had the word 5G in it, right? They didn't realize it was 5 gigahertz. It was unimpressive. But I think, you know, this brings it back to networking and connectivity is an expectation. And so what we're really doing now is taking that underlying fabric. And by the way, I love that we were bringing in these other standards group, because when I was talking about network roaming, I think about how much we're going to have to figure out how to make macro cellular and Wi-Fi work seamlessly together over the next few years. And the fact that you guys are already thinking about that and building the standards to make those go on, I mean, the cumulative brain power in this room is incredible, right? And I'm not saying that to just stroke the ego. I mean, I think Wouter alone, I think, is smarter than my entire 5th grade class, right? And so I think we're making a lot of movement, and value-add services is the way we differentiate. And people think, oh, I'm going to add apps, and yes, you will have apps, but the reality is value-add services will come in many, many forms, right? We already are doing some of it with the advanced security, with some of the things we're doing on advanced SON and handoff, but some of the cooler, things like the Wi-Fi sensing we announced last week with our home awareness product. Very simple implementation of Wi-Fi sensing, very, very early days of what we're doing. But it just shows that there's all of these insights in the home. And, if you think about those insights that are most valuable in the home, we've been calling them insight engines, or at least I call them that. Other people think I'm nuts for how I talk about it, but it's okay. We know what devices are on the home network. That's a really valuable thing. We know what services those devices are doing at a high level, right? We may not know every service they do, but we understand they're running Netflix, they're running different high-level things. And now with things like Wi-Fi sensing, we also know about the movement of people about the home. These are all really valuable things to build services on top of that make people's lives easier. And we're just starting to scratch the surface on it. So the fact that we're embracing the connectivity, look, with fiber, I mean, we don't talk about it a lot out in the public space. We all know the average utilization of our networks is way lower than the speeds they're buying. And it's time to start to recognize that and say, okay, the consumers don't really, beyond a few hundred megabits, they don't see a ton of value from the connectivity speeds, unless they're a superpower user, et cetera. But it's now about how do we enable innovation on that home network, in much the same ways we're enabling innovation on our mobile networks with things like MEC. We're doing the same things there. So I'm really excited. I mean, I think we've made some really great progress with value-add services, but we're just getting started. And what things like prpl about is really creating this platform where we can innovate, at speed. The most important thing we had to do is just get aligned and start to get to common platforms as we get there. So.
Thank you so much, both of you. It's great to have Sophie and Lance with us today, because it's such an amazing knowledge they share from all the different streams that they have been building in the industry, and now building on top of that, how we can extend into the collaboration, the connectivity side. On the acceleration of the deployments, we have seen that, bringing as Jason was saying, my Home Grid Forum hat on, which is the collaborating with the prpl Foundation on using the prpl mesh for acceleration of the deployments and separation of the back front and the forefront of these streams, so that we have a reliability, as you said, for the wired side. We are deploying the wireless connectivity on top of the GHN wired connectivity on any kind of wire. So it's an amazing way to split between the back haul and the front haul streams to have reliable and free of movement in the same time. So it's all about collaboration on this. If you were to think of the creating a prpl Foundation working group on the application store side, do you see a need for that, so that we can have all the previous standards and the new standards brought into a single, similar to what Google and iOS are doing on the Play Store? Do you see a need for that to complete the picture, to help?
I do.
Go ahead.
I think it's going to be different than what we think about an app store and a mobile phone. I was actually talking with the Soft at Home folks this week, and I'll share a little bit of what I talked about there. You got to remember that the home router is more like a cloud server than it is a phone. Right now, it's more personal to us because we have it in our homes and we've kind of gotten used to doing it. But let me give you a use case of how I see the world of apps. And there will be apps that you install. The consumer goes out to their app, we have a mobile app as well as we have this smart display that you can use to control your home network. And there will be some services they say, yes, I want to select that service, please add it. But I think what's more likely to occur, I'll give you a scenario. You go out and buy a new smart thermostat, right? For those that know, things like the Google Nest thermostat, et cetera, they are designed so that they recognize when you're home or when you're away, and they adjust the temperature. Today, the way they do that is primarily by putting an app on your phone that tracks your location everywhere you're at, which is very privacy insensitive as you get there. I see a world where there is a container app store, and through the lifecycle management team that Purple's doing, you guys are already starting to work on the plumbing of how all of that actually orchestrates and how we make those things occur. But I think the consumer experience is going to be more like, I buy a new Nest thermostat, I put it on my home network. Device identification within the home router sees, I've got a new Nest thermostat on my home network. And it alerts the user through the app, or in our case, the smart display as well, saying, hey, we recognized you put a new Nest thermostat. We can enhance the function of that by installing the Google Nest container. The Nest container, and you say, yes, I want it. It says, hey, would you like to give the Nest container access to Wi-Fi sensing information so it knows when you're home or away? I say, yes, I approve it, because that seems like a reasonable usage of my data of Wi-Fi sensing. And now that thermostat can operate effectively when I'm home and away without having to actually track my location at all times, right? So it's a much more privacy-sensitive approach toward it. But the user probably did not ever go to an app store to get Google Nest. Things like device ID and service ID can recognize, I have got a new device or service that needs help. Let me alert the user to it. So you will have an app store in the back end. You'll have a collective of containers, and you'll have a life cycle orchestration, and this organization is doing amazing things already there. I think the key thing we've got to figure out to enhance that is, one, how to integrate device ID and service ID into that vision. And then the other piece of that I think we've got to do is, right now, as we orchestrate, we're putting these things on there like we're in full control. We need to think about it like apps on a phone, where certain insights like location on a phone, things like Wi-Fi sensing, device ID, and service ID are very sensitive to people. You're going to need to make sure that they approve that these new containerized things can do it. So we still have to work through a few of those things of how we get that user experience perfect. But look, I mean, we're 80% there on the way that we've already been executing, and the piece parts are getting in place. So what about you? What do you think?
Well, I think that it's maybe hard for some people to imagine that tomorrow the gateway will be something different than just an access broadband gateway. But as you said, two days ago at Network X, this gateway has already become a way to control the home network of our customers. So it has a lot of features, and it has a lot of unique capabilities. So it's really a good asset, a wonderful asset we have as operator to unleash a new major software platform. This is the first thing. It's hard to imagine that today, but that's really the way that it's going to happen, because there's a momentum, that's for sure. Customer needs, these technological capabilities, and also the industry. And we are all gathered today, and that's the proof that things are changing. So indeed, it won't be like the App Store on my iPhone, and I will not download something specific. But for sure, with the capability we have and we control remotely, we'll be able to provide through all the features and capabilities embedded, and together with the cloud capability behind, to be able to unleash some services automatically and be able to really bring added value services to the customers. But also, talking about the industry, we see that today lots of money is spent just to, let's say, do the same thing, but on a new platform, because it's Wi-Fi X, YZ, that is the new trend. And this is something we can't keep on doing. We really have to fight for bringing effective and faster innovations up to the final users. Because we can't spend so much time and energy just doing the same thing, embedding same features, whereas we have really in our hands the possibility to develop new features, because we have already the asset deployed worldwide. It's 1 to 2 billion devices up there. So yes, it will become a platform. No, it won't be like an app store, but the ideas behind is the same. Why? Because we have needs, we have the industry, and now we have also, as operators, to differentiate once again. And the race to speed is not the right thing to do now.
Yeah, I love that comment about, look, as marketing people, Sophie and I are business people at our hearts, right? We're marketers and business people. You guys are the smart people that actually turn the dreams into something useful. The reality, though, is I think about a lot of the things a home router does. I can promise all of you, network address translation will never be a marketable feature, right? So the fact that we are doing, we're standardizing that, we're making that something that's open source, none of us get any value. And I don't mean just as operators, I don't think any of the OEMs get differentiation. I don't think the chipset people, the software providers, nobody gets differentiation with a lot of the plumbing in a router. So let's take away that so that we're not reinventing the wheel. There is room for differentiation with prpl. The beauty of the API approach is that you can innovate on the sides of those APIs. You can have a better SON controller with Easy Mesh, right? And with the prpl Mesh project. All they're standardizing is the way that you talk to things. You can make a better controller, you can make better Wi-Fi within that world. And I think that's very important, is we can all differentiate. I think there's another piece of this that's a bit of an elephant in a room, and I want to call it out, which is I think any good ecosystem, you need choice. And one of the things I've sensed as we've gone around here, I have multiple conversations with a lot of folks, that feels like people are like the prpl world and the RDK world are like in some kind of conflict. And it shouldn't be, right? I mean, none of us would live with only iOS or only Android.
That's a great point, yes.
Right? If the apps on our phones could only come from one party, nobody would have put the innovation. That choice is important. And as I look around that, I think we need to recognize part of what we have to do is not just support. You need to have standard platforms, but you also need to have a couple. You never want to have 20, or as in our case right now, there's probably 50 out there, 60 of them out there between all the OEMs that have them there. But you need a couple, and some may be better at certain functions than others, right? And operators and the industry need some level of choice. So I think that's an important thing. We should not be trying to have the conversation of it's one or the other. It needs to be both. What I do challenge this organization, and there are folks in the low-level API team that are here today, the work that's being done to try and find ways to align RDK's hardware abstraction layer and the lower-level API, wonderful, right? It's a necessary thing. It's going to make it easy for the chipset folks if they have that kind of an alignment. And similarly on the high-level APIs, let's be honest, right? We're all running in the USPTR69 world, whether it's in these two ecosystems. So I think that the fact that we've been creating that alignment is good, and we should preserve that. So let's focus on how do we adopt these standards. So I loved it when we brought in the Wireless Broadband Alliance and that we brought in the Broadband Forum, because we're all really going toward the same things, and we're enabling across these ecosystems.
I think nobody will gain from putting those two communities into competition. No. There is no way. And here we can feel that the spirit is not to build a Chinese wall around us and prevent anybody to come and join. So really the question is not either RDK or either prpl. It's really to join the forces to the industry and make it happen in two communities. And that's what is going on. Yeah. And there is no problem about that. So I think it's very important to point in, to say it, and to feel comfortable with that.
Yeah. I love that comment from both of you. We have spent as an industry, the broadband community in general, so many years back already, trying to choose on the service provider side between wired deployments or wireless deployments. We all know that. Trying to compare the two sides of the technologies. We spend money, time, resources trying to educate users, trying to enhance the internal capabilities. And I think after so many years of that, everyone here in the room learned that it is about combining, using the reliability, as Lars said, of the wired connectivity, having all the wireless on top of that, having an intelligent use of the two streams when it's needed, so that they can complement each other. It's about complementarity, to have the freedom of movement and at the same time the highest reliability. When it comes to the users, and it was so obvious during the Network X other panels I have participated in. We have translated on the service provider side from the quality of service some years back into quality of experience. We're so focused on quality of service, and now it's about frustration-free kind of experience, quality of experience from all the users. If they are happy, they can download, email the healthcare services, speaking of value-added services, healthcare services, the cooking at home, education for children, working from home, and then having the children entertained, and then studying, and then the gaming, and all of that, real time, all at the same time, multi-stream, multi-room. So that's just an amazing experience that has put under such a pressure the service providers' capabilities, the bandwidth, the services, the calls support, technical support. If something is happening, my network is not working, my Wi-Fi is not working, nothing is working, you don't know. So you have to have the remote technical support for all the users, but it's so difficult to have the topology discovery immediately and knowing what is the losing point? What was the device that actually is not performing correctly at that time? And this is where the gateway, in the next generation, the gateway on the service provider side can differentiate, and understanding at the fingertips what exactly needs to be done, so that the users are happy instantly, because when they are not, they just change. And that's not what we need. We need them to understand that they have the highest level of support from the service providers on all fronts at any time, all the value-added services at their fingertips, whether it's cooking, education, video gaming, anything they can want in any single room, so you can provide that. It's just we need to educate them.
Yeah, I think the customers are what do they want is the connectivity to their device for a single usage every moment. So as a customer, I want an optimized connection. Whatever I do for each and every device I may use at home, smartphone, tablets, or PC. And I want to control also the digital usage of my family, so I want to keep an eye on that. And now what we see is that the home network of the customers are really growing and growing. There was this Matter 1.0 released a few days ago. The homes of our customers are growing, the complexity is growing as well, and we have a perfect role to play, and we have to become the best digital butler of the home, because we can see, as you say, we have a complete view of what is going on, and so with data, with some intelligence, we can know exactly what is happening. Is it an extender which is needed, or is it just an IoT device what you have to shut down? This will be complex and more complex, so we will need intelligence, data, and automatic, let's say, responses to the different problems before the customer calls. That's very, very important. And more, at least in Europe, I know what's going on in the US, but in Europe, we will focus on energy management and how the connectivity is also very optimized in terms of energy consumption, and not to have all the devices on all the time and so on. So this is also a kind of added value services that we may provide in the future.
Many things. That's a great point. We also capture that in the Network X panels, because the command and control option for the house, we used to call that smart home. I think it's an intelligent way, commanded, controlled home environment.
We call it sensitive home at Orange.
Sensitive, exactly. Well said, Sophie. And the homeowner needs to feel in control of that, not just from controlling the applications and the devices connected, but from the power consumptions to a great extent point of view, because up until now we had electric utilities providing a bill once a month. You didn't know in advance, you just get the amount, you pay, and you don't know why exactly it's coming from. So now with the power consumption capabilities and also the collaboration between service providers and electric utilities, it gets yet another dimension, so that homeowners can control that and know, in many cases, real-time, two-way communication between the appliances, home appliances, and the central office, so they can note every single day that's coming as well, the power consumption. So that's a great point, and it's really one of the value-added services that everyone will need.
The trick will be making it really easy, right? I think, I go back to a stat, and I suspect a lot of you guys have similar stats. The reality is consumers don't want to manage home networks. They don't understand the complexity. Sometimes I laugh at how much energy we put into the web UIs of our routers that are used by like 8 people in the entire enterprise.
True.
The trick in all of this as we make these is to be really leaning on the consumer experience side, to abstract away the complexity so that they don't need to know how that happened. It just happened, right? And similarly to, as they were talking about roaming between, Wi-Fi and 5G and private 5G. I think about the future. One of the big pushes that we have planned at Verizon is to really start to enable a lot more types of devices on 5G. And people will say, hey, does that mean you don't believe in Wi-Fi? And I said, no, the only devices that we're trying to enable on 5G are the ones that you take with you, right? They're still going to use Wi-Fi in many cases in the home, or in most cases in the home. It's that when you take them with you, you want them to be always connected. Making something move from a Wi-Fi network to a 5G network in a seamless way that's transparent is not a trivial thing, as everyone in this world, in this room knows, but you do it so well. And, despite the fact that there are, a very small percentage of our population that gets their own home router, most of them, I think, are network engineers or technologists, the reality is most people don't want to do it. And I think back to video conferencing, right? I was in my early days at Intel back in the 90s, I was a tester for ProShare. If you guys remember the little, 320 line, video conferencing of ProShare. And it was completely useless. You couldn't have a real conversation. And we just got through a pandemic where we did all of our communications through high definition video conferencing. And it would have never been possible if the operators had not done the optimizations. I mean, we were doing 720p video conferencing over an IMS core on LTE, right? Doing that was not trivial. I mean, the optimizations that happened all throughout the network to make it so that could happen took a lot of work on people behind the scenes. But that's what we do, right? We enable communications, we enable people's lives. And to do this, what we've got to figure out how we do is, yes, we're going to do things like Matter, and we're going to enable home automation, we're going to enable energy management, but how do you make that super simple for the users? We were meeting with a company while we were here, and they were showing kind of their UI, and it was a very cool UI. And I said, oh, that's great, but you got to take the top half, that's interesting, because it was setting some profiles for different scenarios. The rest of that, the consumer will never understand it, just get rid of it, right? Our job is not just to make this elegant technology that makes it all very simple in the end. I mean, that's what Apple has always been so great at. They take a lot of complexity and they make it simple for the mainstream. That's going to be a challenge we have as we try and do some of this. Do I want it to manage the energy? Yes. Do I want my washing machine to phone me while I'm at work? No. I want my washing machine to be smart enough to do the right thing, or my heat to do the right thing when I'm in the right places. And making that simple is tough. But it's the stuff that we have to do over the coming years here.
I understand you shared some of those great visionary slides during also the event.
I don't know how visionary our slides were, but we did talk a lot about kind of the world, and I'm happy to kind of touch base on a few of them, but I think the reality is, I think a lot of the folks in this room already know a lot of it. I mean, in the talk, I did things here. We talked about things like the history of the home network, but you guys are the ones that were there for all of this, right? I did. It was funny as we were creating the slides. It was very cathartic to think back on, that Linksys BEFSR 41, which was the first of those home routers, right? I remember getting that with my first cable modem, which was believe it or not, it was a 10 megabit cable modem. But what was funny is in those days, there was no access control in the cable modem. Every house got full 10 megabits, right? And so they didn't particularly like those routers as we did it. But if you think about that progression, where we went as operators from essentially avoiding the home routers, right? We wanted to sell broadband to an individual device, to this world now where we manage billions of home networks is truly incredible. And now we've got to figure out how we take that next step and really enable the home in a more holistic way. So that's what this slide was really talking about. And then, Sophie, you already kind of talked about this slide as you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, that's the key differentiators.
Yeah.
That's what I said at the beginning, And then this is the tremendous asset we have as operators. And we have to leverage this, and we don't fully realize this asset we have in our hands. And that's very important to have that in mind and to be able to leverage this, because it had become really a very intelligent device and very powerful device. But it should be a shame that we don't use it more to leverage the value of the industry with standardization and openness. And we show also what happened in a technology market when standardization and openness arise, I think. And
right there.
because we said that today, indeed, the big problems we have is fragmentation and of the OS and lack of support for a business model based on software innovation. So we said that if we look back at the PC and the smartphone history, at the beginning, both patterns were the same. Chaos stage, because lots of different operating systems, just a few applications, because each application is specific to each platform. And then you have this turning point with standardization, consolidation, and openness. For the PC, it was the MS-DOS. For the smartphone, the App Store, the famous, or the iPhone. And then from this turning point on, you have this boom in innovation, this increase of added value services and benefits. And what's important here, and it's very important to say it, this value creation benefits to all the stakeholders, chipco, OEM, platform providers, the third-party software developers, and of course, at the end, the most important, the final users. And it's important to say it, because if we manage to do that, thanks to prpl, everybody will gain and will collect, let's say, benefits. So it's very important that also to keep in mind that this initiative will happen only if we really want to make it happen. It really depends on our willingness to make it happen. So it's very, very clear to have that in mind. This is all in our hands. So this was the call to action we made in the Network X.
I wanted to point something out here, though. I mean, this slide, what was really interesting is you notice that on any of these platforms that have gone to become a boom, kind of a part of our lives, every one of them ended up with two platforms in the end. And so that earlier discussion about RDK and prpl, I think it's really important. That's why I'm so obsessed that we can't try and stomp out, the other platform, right? The consumers need it. Any ecosystem that has come to light, right? You've got iOS and Android, you've got Windows and Mac, you've got Linux in there, so you might have a third that's kind of running around. It's a small one, but it's there. The reality is all these platforms end up coming to two because you need that for competitive choice, right? And that's a good thing. And then I think you hit this one already.
Yeah.
A lot of those people in this room.
Yeah, so for Orange commitment to prpl, we've decided to integrate prpl in our CP 2023 roadmap. So we will make it happen, make it concrete.
Okay. And Verizon, similarly, I showed actually at the event our first prpl OS device, which the first one we're doing it with is what we call our mini extender, which is a Wi-Fi 6E mini extender that pairs. It's the device there that would be on the left. It pairs with the router up on the upper right. And it's basically designed to work with both 5G and our fiber business. That device is the first of the ones to get prpl OS. We have hundreds of thousands of those in the field, not millions like the routers. It was the first one because we wanted to do it on something that had a smaller subset for the first implementation in production. But that is rolling out here in Q4 via firmware update, so it'll rehome to prpl OS. And then our plan is starting in Q1 of next year, we'll start rolling through all of our Wi-Fi 6 and newer generation routers and extenders to moving them to prpl OS over we'll call it the next 18 months. That's a big deal for us. But I can already tell you, look, we operate on like many of the operators in this world, we have a multi-vendor strategy that we operate on, both at the OEM level, the chipset level. Actually in the router that you see in the upper right corner, we even did a manufacturing process. So we consciously, for the second OEM, picked a different semiconductor lithography. We we actually even slowed it down because we wanted to change the Wi-Fi chipset to make sure it was on a different lithography. And it was because in today's world of supply chain, it gave us a ton of flexibility to have these options out there. And yet all of it is on the same OS, right? We call it CRISP internally, but it's moving to the same OS under prpl OS. And that's a big thing. It gives us a ton of flexibility. It lets us build a new value-add service and have it hit all of our customers at once. Because the truth of the matter is our customers really don't know. We're actually getting ready to do a rebranding of our home broadband. Today we call it Fios for the fiber broadband, and we have our 5G home for the 5G. We're getting ready to move it to a new branding of Verizon Home Internet. Because the consumers don't know or care whether it's 5G or fiber or what below the hood. And we want to keep that simple for them. So we are very committed. We're moving very quickly to make the jump to prpl OS.
I was just complimenting you on this one. We noticed in these latest years that the first thing a user needs is to be technology agnostic, in the sense of not needing to understand what's the technology that it's supporting the service. Mm-hmm. Some of us would like that, but so many of us don't need that. And we just need to make it work. Mm-hmm. You have the convergence of all these different technologies, the segmentation of the network in a way that you have end-to-end connectivity, but every single segment of the network does its own job, and they don't need to know what's beyond that, what's behind that. So this is exactly your great achievement in providing the service.
Well, it's not really my great achievement. It's a whole lot of people in this room's great achievement, to be quite honest. We just put it on a direction, and you guys made it happen for us. But so, big thanks to all of the vendors and partners and employees that did that. But it's been an amazing journey to see us get there, and that ability to add services dynamically to any of those is going to be a really wonderful thing. I mean, we just got started with home awareness and the new device ID capabilities that we launched last week, but we have lots of plans for cool services on top of these now that we're getting standardized.
If you'd have all the money, all the time, all the resources in the world, what would you choose as a value-added service that you would think could truly differentiate you and put you in the best spot position for consumers to choose you to go forward with you? And thinking of the last 2 years again, like the home gaming, the healthcare services for
that one.
Go ahead. Yes?
Yeah, so we actually we've got this in test, and Talbert here probably knows more about this than anyone. One of the services that I've always believed would be there, and we got it in test, but kind of COVID ended before we got it to production, was we all have our corporate networks. At Verizon, our corporate Wi-Fi is called vTeam, and it's has a certificate, authentication, et cetera. We built a containerized approach to extend vTeam into employees' homes. So the whole VPN, having to log in, all of those things. Why not just have a separate VLAN and SSID that dynamically gets provisioned based on the companies that household works for? Get rid of VPN. Right? It was wonderful, right, to think about that. We didn't get it launched before COVID ended, right? But that idea that you could extend a person's corporate network into the home with all of the right provisioning certificates and all of those things, I still believe that will be a very powerful thing. And in fact, we're actually now looking at how do we extend that to network slicing with the 5G side, so that when you leave the home, you take your corporate network with you on your devices like your notebook. That's one that I think would be amazingly valuable for people who are now truly moving to a hybrid work world where they're sometimes in the office or sometimes at home. Think about the number of security agents we all have on our notebook computers to protect us against unfriendly networks that we could get away with if we did that. So that's my favorite one.
Mine would be simpler. I think I would love that Orange could say to the customers, well, whatever the device you use, whatever the usage you have, Orange provides you with the best connectivity, the best experience, whatever you do, whatever you use. And it seems very simple, to say it, but actually that means prioritization, that means device identification and service identification. And I think all that could be brought to the customer in a very simple way. You will have always the best experience ever, whatever you do, wherever you are at home with any device you use. So it could be very interesting, easy promise, but behind a lot of great work to be done.
Yeah. I've got another one that I love. Sorry, I get really into these value-add things.
Please, that's exactly what we need. Share with us.
And I'll share with you guys a little bit because you guys are all family here. And one of the things that we love about Wi-Fi sensing, and I don't know if the Origin folks are the Origin folks here today? So we use Origin AI as our Wi-Fi sensing partner. But all the Wi-Fi sensing companies are kind of implementing cool things. One of them is they're starting to get accurate enough where they can detect, they can't recognize that it's Sophie or Pavan that's in the room, but they can recognize the difference between human A and human B when there's motion in different rooms. And the ability to recognize who's in a room is probably a year and a half from now. Somewhere around there, I think, is when we'll get there. And think about having like a state engine in your router where you know human A and human B and what room they're in at any given time. Think about how you could use that to do things like content recommendation personalization, right? What you watch on TV is different when you're with your spouse or your kids than when you're alone. Well, Wi-Fi sensing, it will, in about a year and a half, will get to the point where I know human A and human B are there. When they're in the same room together, they tend to watch these things. I don't need to know who human A and human B are to get better at recommendations for those humans in that room.
We love it, yes.
I think that's a very cool use case of getting much cooler recommendations for people.
AI-based recognition of their habits, of the downloading and the applications we're using, and then recommending that. I think that's something that we all love, right?
Yeah. And behind that, you can grab the targeted ad and these kind of things, which are very new area of growth for lots of us.
Hey, and you could turn the lights on to the settings that those people like the lights on, right? When you're, there's all kinds of use cases when you start to understand how people are moving about.
That's the key. And again, a learning lesson during all this time was that now we are looking at the use cases first of all, and then understanding based on the use cases what is the best topology, the best technology, the best application, the best feature that you need to apply and provide for the users, which is why we're getting this great support.
And I think as operators, I think we often race to try and figure out how do we monetize. And it's something that we have to be a little careful of. I know, like, Pavan, that's his role within the organization, is to figure out these value add. On one hand, we have to figure out that there is a way to monetize, and there's got to be some ways. But the reality is, if you remember when the App Store first came out, there was not paid stuff in the App Store, right? To some extent, you've got to provide the value and let people experiment, get it excited about it. You'll find a way to monetize it over time. We all will, right? But I think what's more important is that we get the capabilities in place to drive the innovation spiral that makes things happen. And then from that innovation spiral, we'll start to all figure out how we monetize these things.
I fully agree. It's like a teaser, a hook. Get them try, get them experience, get them provide the feedback as well, because for them it's also a learning, and they have the time and resources more than you as a technology and service provider company have to play with the app, to play with the service, to experience the quality of their experience, and then provide that feedback that you need to enhance the service furthermore. And once you do that, they are already engaged, hooked up, and then you can monetize.
That's a journey we have to go through. And for all of us, it's a new journey that you have to open. So go in step by step, and that's the way to make it happen.
Thank you so much. Do you have any questions? You have now the chance.
Very quiet room.
I guess this means that you have provided all the great answers, and the way you explained, no, you don't have to choose. You have to be ready for everything. You have to embrace the different platforms. You have to provide what the customers are needing, and then that's why we have all the different demos here to complement the picture, and you'll see those in the breaks and also in the afternoon. And Dave Barr is going to provide more details after lunchtime. Yes?
Oh, there's one.
Randy and Mike.
Yeah, go for it, Randy.
Randy, please.
So earlier in the conversation, Sophie, you had mentioned, I'll take the microphone. You had mentioned the construct around energy management. A lot of what I've heard this past week is not something that's new, but actually I'm hearing it more, and that's the topic about sustainability. So sustainability becoming more imperative, especially what I'm seeing in the EU, and many of you who I've spoken with about that topic. I would just be interested to understand from your perspective how Purple then can become more effective in value-added services that may be related to sustainability. I mean, you talked about the energy management piece,
Okay.
but more so it's the whole construct of how do we look at APIs? How does it all fit together? It's more than just the physical device. I think someone had mentioned to me they saw a router that was constructed out of wood as a demonstration of sustainability.
Yes.
I mean, look, there's some extremes to sustainability, but what does it really mean from the perspective of you all as leaders in the operator community, and how we as a community can start really evaluating what we need to do to be able to ensure sustainability from any services that we offer?
May start. So at Orange, we've been working a lot for years on this subject, and this subject is growing, and we want to use that not as constraint. I have a constraint because I have to decrease the environmental impact of my devices and on the usage. We really want to use that and to leverage this to differentiate once again. So you can see different areas of sustainability. You have the hardware, you say wood, for instance. So if in the previous slide, you have the latest box we released in France, and it will be released also in other countries in Europe. We use recyclable plastics and these kind of things, and we refurbish a lot. And this brings a lot of economy in terms of course, let's say, capex, but also, of course, impacts on the environment. And you have also all the things which are hidden and that help us decreasing the energy consumption. Like, for instance, the Wi-Fi 6E. There is not a lot of device now using the 6 gigahertz. So we have an automatic way to disable the 6 gigahertz if there is no device with 6 gigahertz around the gateway, and that decreases the consumption. But for this kind of use, we really need the chip code to provide us with the right API to be able to play with the on and off usage of the different bands. And this could be a very added value of the Purple Foundation if we all agree of this kind of low-level APIs that enable us as operator to really control what and when we want to unleash this on that, let's say, band. And with the Wi-Fi 7 coming with this aggregation, it will be all the more complex. And it will be a fight above the problem of sustainability. Who is controlling, actually, the experience of the customers? Will it be just the Wi-Fi 7 at the lowest level that will choose what is going on in the homes, or will it be the operator? Because the operator wants maybe a different journey, a different experience, wants to have a personalized the journey for the customers, and wants also to decrease the electrical consumption. And of course, you have also the last area of sustainability, which is the smart home. How can I, from an operator point of view, control also the different devices and the different usage of energy, but above the devices and so on, the heatings, and this is also another area where we can play. And here again, containerization of added value services will take some great advantage of Purple as well. There was another.
Many thanks,
Maybe
Mike.
you want
Yes,
to add
Mike.
something?
Well, you hit a lot of good stuff there. I would put a couple. One is, this is not because of my intellect. This is because of people within our supply organization. But you look at like our routers. The plastics we use come from recycled. What do they call it? Sea waste or whatever. It's the recycled waste that's floating in the sea. People like Jim Gowan at Verizon are really passionate about it, and they push on us. And so, as we range devices, we should be thinking about talking to our sustainability teams and asking those questions. I think the other thing is that, you think about the number of devices we have connected into our home networks. Many of these don't have they're on old technologies without good power management, et cetera. Things like device ID can be evolved to recognize those and letting customers know, hey, you've got these 3 devices that are not particularly great on the energy. You might consider replacing them or upgrading them. Those are things that we can do with device ID, and we can start getting smarter with it. So I can think of lots of ways we can continue to push that bar on sustainability.
Yeah, thanks very much, hey, Lance and Sophie. Really appreciate your thought leadership around applications. We had a roundtable yesterday. One of the things that came up is, really what is the prioritization of applications coming forward? You talked about Wi-Fi sensing, work, learn from home, obviously the background stuff from the operator that needs, that flexibility in providing their products out there. But beyond that, where do you see us moving forward from an application perspective, from a priority perspective, that would give us some insight on, where do we really need to get those APIs, whether high level or low level, ready to support what's coming next?
Well, I mean, I think, I talked about those 3 insights, right? Look, we're still refining those, right? Those insight engines become the basis of a lot of things on top of it. I think the obvious areas that will probably be early in kind of the first apps are going to be home automation, energy management. I think there are some non-obvious ones that seem to have a lot of groundswell. The notion of property management, and that one has really gotten a lot of attention. Again, that's based on Wi-Fi sensing is what it's using. So I think early on, and it'll matter what we're going to do with just kind of automation, smart home automation stuff. Those will be the early stuff that I think kind of comes to the forefront. But a lot of what we're doing right now is refining those insight capabilities for those 3 areas, right? And I'll go back, device identification, service identification, and Wi-Fi sensing for the person of understanding the movement about the home. Those are the 3 kind of big areas we're investing to really get those fundamentals. I mean, if you really look at our home awareness app that we launched, it's kind of a toy app to just let you play with Wi-Fi sensing. It's really not super functional yet on what it does. For those that haven't seen it, it's like if you looked at a glass of water, it has little bubbles for every room, and as there's motion, the bubbles get bigger for the rooms. So it's just showing you which rooms have motion is all it is. It's very simple. But it's helping consumers get used to it, while we start to develop more innovative things on top of it. So I think automation is the ones, whether it's energy automation, whether it's, that's going to be an early one that comes out. But look, the reality is with any innovation spiral, we're going to be surprised by the things that take off.
I just want to add maybe security, home security, which is part
Getting
of
really
this
important,
sensitive home, but it's also very important for everybody. So it could, and of course the idea of having a platform is to be able to be fed by other ideas coming from third parties, and this is all this community which will bring innovations and fresh ideas for everyone. I think there was a question there.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Another, but maybe we ran out. I was on the front for the. Sorry, I don't know how long we.
Yeah, I don't want to like overstay our welcome here. I mean, we're the marketing guys. You tech people, like, get them off the stage so we can talk about technical things.
That's good. So I got a follow-up question on the app store. Do you see operators are adopting the same app store, or will each one will have his own?
I think each ecosystem will have, I'll call it a common certification and maybe even repository on the back end. Individual operators will decide which ones that they want to present to their customers. But I do believe we would be making a mistake if we don't get to a common certification and repository, because that's the whole point of having a common platform. Exactly how we do that, we still have to figure that out.
That's it.
Other question on that side?
I have the other microphone, Livia.
Oh.
Or no, pass it to me secretly.
Proactive.
Sure, Broadband
Yes.
Forum can talk. Come on, tell us what you got.
Well, so no, I have a serious question about what we need to do, or what you guys need to be able to. So obviously the technology exists for the operator to position themselves right, because they have this box, they have the interface into the home, they have all these technologies that are supporting it, to be the ones who are wrangling the Wild West of the smart home and finally getting it to be a thing. And there's a number of reasons that it's not a thing, and it has to do with the fact that no one's taking control of it, and the operators are in a position to do so. Is there anything that we need to do, either from a standardization perspective or a messaging perspective, to kind of help that story along so that more people are accepting the operators as the ones who are wrangling it?
You want to take this one, or?
Well, I think that, thank you. First of all, thank you for your question. No, I think what is very important is that really, as I said, the initiative will be a success for all of us in the room, only if we really want to make it happen. So the fact that you are here today is very important, because that shows that it's not a standalone initiative. This is something open, and we push standardization, open standards, so it's normal, and it should be very powerful that all together we drive the same speeches, and I think that's what we do. But indeed, saying that prpl is open, saying that it's not, let's say, an initiative which is locked by just a few actors, and even if we say that it's driven by operators, once again, the aim is that the value creation will benefit to all of us. So this kind of message to point out also that prpl and RDK coexist, and that's okay with that. That's okay, and that's complementary. I think this is key messages that will be helpful for us to grow and to really make it happen till the app stores and so on. So I think that, and of course, if in the working group we can have some joint forces, and that would be great. And of course, we have common members already, so that's a good thing.
Many thanks. Can you take a last one, Arnaud?
Yeah.
Wayne.
Thanks. I appreciate your thoughts and evangelism, pushing prpl to the market and making it real to all of us. Maybe tying into some of the other questions, what do you see as the next killer app or mega trend that is going to drive the need for advanced services?
I'm going to take megatrend because the app's tougher, okay? I think the next big megatrend is wireless, wireline, well, I'll call it home mobile convergence, right? Across the world, all of us as operators, we're moving to sell connectivity to a household, right? And whether that's connectivity in the form of Wi-Fi in the home, or whether that's connectivity in the form of 5G to your mobile or 5G to your notebook computer, all of it, the consumer doesn't care. They don't understand the difference. And so I think the next big killer thing that's going to drive it is making that seamless ability to move between all of the wireless networks in your life as easy as possible, right, for our consumers. I think that's the next big problem we solve. And that's why I love that the Wireless Broadband Alliance was here, right? Because they're working on this open roaming, starting to think about how do we move between private 5G, public 5G, Wi-Fi in the home, and making that seamless. I think that is a really positive movement, because the consumer doesn't understand the differences.
Okay, so I will have a different answer. I'm quite optimistic, but I don't believe that in the 2 coming years we will have a killer app. It would be great, and I would be the first one to be very happy about that. So, but I rather think when we had these slides on smartphone and PC, that we will learn. We will educate also the market and our customers. We will know better their needs, and then there will be maybe a few killer apps. I hope so. But at the beginning, I think it's maybe a too big dream to start with. So I believe there will be one. For the moment, I don't have any idea. There's a bunch of added value services. There won't be at the start killer app, and we will have to create them along the way in the journey together.
Yeah, everyone says it's a speed test, but honestly, I don't, it's funny, I've heard multiple say that the killer app of fiber or whatever is a speed test. I don't buy it. I think people in this room, we do speed tests a lot, right? Network engineers do speed tests a lot. I don't think my dad knows how to do a speed test, nor does he care to do a speed test. He knows when the Wi-Fi isn't working back in the back bedroom, because he calls me and says, hey, what can I get for a new Wi-Fi? Because I can't get Wi-Fi in the back bedroom, but he doesn't know all those other things. I have ideas about how we can make speed tests better than it is right now, but that's not important today. I think it's going to be many killer apps. You got to run?
Yeah.
Okay.
No. It's just
Yeah, we got to get off the
because-
stage so
I
that
don't know
others.
how many times. Who is the timekeeper? I don't know.
Arno
Nobody's
is
the
saying-
timekeeper.
Arno is saying that now it's time
so
for coffee
interesting
break.
that we cannot stop here. We have to go on and ask questions. But yes, it's
amazing.
time for break.
It's amazing
So-
to see how much value-added content you have been adding for this session.
There was
I don't
another-
feel like we added a lot of content per se, but I do.
I don't
I'm
know
glad
if
we had a
there's
good
another
conversation.
question. No? Okay.
Arno is telling us that we should now continue with the break and share your questions
do it.
with Sophie and Lance during the break. Ending the session on the great to have Orange and Verizon committed to Purple OS and Purple Mesh. Build on the standardization on the open source to make this acceleration happening. And please join me in a great round of applause for having them here. We are so busy and it's great.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.